Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu Alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, thank you for joining us this evening for Wealth Creation Preservation. Alhamdulillah, we have a wonderful broadcast prepared for today. I will be joined by my co-host, Haja Kamila Mahasan Shu'aib, who has been traveling the world. Alhamdulillah, we're going to get more about that and also an update, or rather, let's call it a debriefing or an informing or an advising or whatever information regarding a very important event that took place this weekend here in Northern California, in Santa Clara to be exact. And it's all about the woman, right? So we're going to do that. What we're going to do now to begin our broadcast today is to play a clip. The clip is a little longer than the average, but there are 5 components to it, and I didn't want to leave any of the components out. It's very important, and it's all about finding your purpose, which is actually the theme and the thesis for tonight: finding yourself and your purpose in life. So we have a clip. I'll call it a 24-minute piece that's addressing that that's being addressed by various leaders, thought leaders in that very subject area. So I'm going to go ahead and share that. It's going to be about 24 minutes, and then we will continue as per usual. All right. Let me share this video file with you.
People say you can't change your career at 30, that's when you're meant to be settling down. You can't change your career at 35, you should have had it figured out by then. Oh my God, you're not married at 38? What the hell are you doing with your life? Who comes up with this stuff? I have no idea. But this stuff plagues so many people that I speak to. So many people open up to me and say, Jay, I just don't know how to change. Is it possible? What do you think this guy was before he became who he is? He used to be a PE teacher, right? Sports teacher at a high school. How about her? She was a telemarketer for 2 weeks. How about her? She applied to be a funeral director. It's incredible. What happens in society is that we're clouded by the noise of family expectations, the noise of our parents, the noise of our brothers and sisters' expectations. I grew up in a family where you could either be a doctor, a lawyer, or a failure, right? Those were my 3 options. Anything else would just count me as a failure. I would have failed. So basically I failed, right? I'm standing up here in front of you all as a failure. I lived as a monk for 3 years. I committed career suicide. I turned down 2 amazing corporate job offers when I graduated from business school. I shaved my hair, I wore robes, and lived out of a gym locker for 3 years. And I did that because I thought I was going to do something meaningful, help impact the world. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. But more than becoming a monk, what that trained me to do was drop out with the rules. People told me, if you come back in 3 years, you'll never get a job. They told me, if you become a monk, people are going to think you're weird forever. No girl's ever going to talk to you. People told me, they were like, well, when you come back to real life, like, will you even be able to talk English? Like, people were just really weirded out. I'm just like, okay, I think monks speak English. And there was so much different noise that I was hearing when I made that decision. And the funny thing is, from having not been a monk for 4 years now, I'm in one of the most incredible periods of my life that I could ever have asked for. And so much of that is based on the fact that I decided to do something different. So many of the times our expectations are driving us in a certain scenario. We focus so much on life in what we want to be as opposed to who we want to be. Because we've always been told that life and jobs and careers are like boxes and containers. There's only a finite number of options. There is no formula, there is no pattern. If you know what you're passionate about, if you know what you're good at, and you invest in that. People say follow your passions, I say forget that, invest in your passions. If you're passionate about something, go and become the best at it. Go and do a course on it. Go and learn from the best. Go and find a mentor who's going to make you incredible at that trait. Not only will you be criticized and grow, you'll be able to find new things about yourself that you never knew. Don't trade who you are for who you think the world needs, because the world needs you to be you, and I mean that.
I was a 19-year-old kid, and I was miserable. I was in love with my high school sweetheart. We were that couple that was really annoying. So we went to school together. We signed up for classes together. We shared a U-Haul on the way to school together. We lived in the same dorm together. We walked to class. We walked to breakfast in the morning and walked to class together. I mean, we were just joined at the hip, and we were completely crazy infatuated in love. And then halfway through the first year of college, she discovered beer and other boys on the same night, and she cheated. I completely fell apart. I stopped going to class. I barely ate anything, certainly nothing healthy. I stopped studying. I just stopped caring about the world. Literally couldn't get out of bed. And I never thought about it until years later. Reading changed my life, because I was still reading. It was one thing that's brought me through everything. And I happened to pick up the school newspaper, and I opened it up, and there was this full-page ad. It was this perfect white sandy beach, turquoise water, big green palm tree. And across the top of the ad, it said, "Escape." Students needed for summertime jobs in the Dominican Republic. So I escaped. I went down there, and one night, my friend Kevin and I, we hopped into a car after dropping off a client. So we're going down this road, 85 miles an hour in this car, and the windows were open, and that air was coming in. That amazing humid, if you've been in the Caribbean, that just gorgeous, amazing humid air is coming in. And then we came upon a corner. We take that corner 85 miles an hour, and that corner became the turning point that put my feet on this stage for you today. Kevin grabs the wheel, he goes, "Hold on!" And I brace. And the car starts sliding sideways, and that weird slow motion thing happens. Kevin's gripping the wheel, trying to make the corner, and all of a sudden, smack. When I came to, I looked over, and Kevin is screaming at the top of his lungs, "Get out of the car, Brendan, get out of the car!" And I look over, and a whole big chunk of his head is open. So I pull myself out of the windshield of this car, and he's screaming over here, and I stand up eventually on the hood of the car, and I look, and I notice all this blood on me, and I remember just looking down and that slow motion thing's happening. I just thought, did I even matter? And I start seeing all these images of my life when I'm surrounded by people that I care for. There's a cake in front of me. Here's my friends singing. My mom leading them in that goofy song. There's my sister, just swinging and smiling right next to me. And it makes you wonder, did I love? Did I love openly and honestly and completely? Or did I hold back because that one time I got hurt? And just as I was about to pass out, I noticed a glint, like a sparkle, something shiny, a reflection in the blood going off the hood of the car, and it made me look up. And there was this bright, big, beautiful moon that night. And I just immediately felt this connection, like I knew I was going to be okay. And I felt like the big guy upstairs reached down to me and handed me life's golden ticket. He reached down and said, "Here you go, kid. You're still alive. You can still love and matter. But now you know the clock is ticking." Mortality, motivation. I got it as a 19-year-old kid. People say, "Why are you so successful?" I'm like, I got mortality motivation when I was 19. That's a blessing. Most people don't get that till they're 60. Don't worry, Kevin and I, we both survived. See, I'm still here. It's okay. I made it. But the one thing that I took away from that entire thing was that moment and those questions, because I remembered them and I thought about them as I was healing. I was like, what was that about? Why did I feel so unhappy with that moment? Because I thought, in the last moments of life, there must be this transcendence, and I was not happy. And I realized it was because of how I'd been living my life, and I wasn't living to my questions. I knew I got those questions. Did I live? Did I love? Did I matter? And soon as I got that those were the questions I'm gonna evaluate myself with at the end of the life, it gave me the power of what my late mentor Wayne Dyer taught, the power of intention. That breath you just took, feel it. What a blessing that is you got that life. What a blessing is you got that breath. That means you still got something inside. You got to work for it. You got to contribute for it. You got to give for it. You got to lead for it. You got to love for it, because you still have something not just in you, you're still here for a reason. And now you just got to earn that blessing.
My parents' biggest frustration was that I was epically lazy, and if they handed out gold medals for being lazy, I would have won, I assure you, hands down. Because even though I was a slightly chubby kid growing up in a morbidly obese family in Tacoma, Washington, I always knew two things about myself. One day I was going to be rich, and I was going to have six-pack abs. Like, those are the two things, as that kid that was, jiggling his belly thinking, one day I'm not going to have to suck in my gut. When I left for college, my own mother, who'd always been my biggest cheerleader, quietly assumed I was going to fail. But these two guys that were successful entrepreneurs and bodybuilders happened to walk into a class when I was a teacher. And they were just starting a technology startup, and they said, hey, we need a copywriter. Why don't you come be a copywriter? And so I was just young enough and just dumb enough, and I went all in. They literally put me in the room with all the computer servers. But starting from there, I knew I could wow people because I was willing to grind it out. And we all have a superpower, and my superpower may be the willingness and ability to endure suffering. I had suffered a lot. I hadn't taken a day off in like 6.5 years because I was so hell-bent to get rich. And then I realized, almost 8.5 years in, I'd finally had enough. I had hit my breaking point from suffering, and I got so mad, and I was so unwilling to do it anymore. And I turned to my partners and I say, I'm completely miserable, I quit. I realized the reason I was living the cliche of money can't buy happiness. Along the way, had become so myopically focused on this promise I had made to myself as a kid that I never stopped to ask, why do I want to get rich? The questions you ask yourself will determine the course of your life. I had been asking myself, what do I need to do to get rich? And it left me really unhappy. So I changed the question, and I started asking, what would I do and love every day, even if I were failing? Life is too short. This is your one go-round. So what are we going to do? We're going to build a company that's predicated on value. We're going to build a company that's predicated on passion. I started thinking about my mom and my sister, but they were profoundly overweight. I started thinking about my uncle who ate himself to death when I was 12 years old, and how much that scared me, and it made me sad. And it made me sad to see that there were millions, if not more than 1 billion people that were in the same kind of abusive relationship with food that my mom and my sister were. So I said, I don't know if it's a big business, but I know it's a big problem. And that's the problem that we're going to solve. And so we decided to build a totally new kind of company. We started Quest Nutrition in 2010, just as we were coming out of the Great Recession. I was wearing a hairnet and a lab coat every day, and my employees were former gang members, ex-drug dealers, felons. We were in Compton, and we literally told everybody in the neighborhood, I don't care if you've been convicted of a crime. I just want to know if you're willing to bust your ass to change your life. And if you are, you're going to get an interview. And I'm not going to ask for your resume. I don't care about your resume. Your resume tells me where you've been. It doesn't tell me the price you're willing to pay to become somebody new. Every belief that you have is a choice. I choose to believe that human potential is nearly limitless. And this was the belief that changed my life. Because once I realized, so it's not about who you are today. It's about who you want to become and the price you're willing to pay to get there. And I promise you, the day that you're willing to pay any price, you'll achieve what you want to achieve. If you truly believe that human potential is limitless, what do you want to become? And what price are you willing to pay to get there?
Gives you better sex, increases your good cholesterol, gives you more friends, gives you more meaning, engagement, life satisfaction, and happiness. If you have a purpose-driven life, it adds years to your life. You live longer. Let me share 2 stories with you. Story number one, we're interviewing one of those school teachers. She says, the first year I taught was heaven. The second year I taught was hell. I had 5 boys that second year, and they were incorrigible. And there was one kid in particular. He was impossible. One day, this kid's in the doorway of the classroom, and he's kicking and moving his arms and making noises, and I lost it. She said, I'm ashamed to say these words. But I walked towards that kid with the intention of kicking him. Thank heavens he got up and ran away. I kept walking. I went to the principal's office. I said, this is it. It's him or me. And the principal took the kid out. She said, I felt terrible. So I went to 2 of my colleagues and poured my heart out. And they said to me, you are not the key to every door. And as she said those words, she burst into tears in the interview. And we waited a long time. And then she looked up and said, I hated that. Those words, you can't be the key to every door. She said, so I decided to become the key to every door. Instead of pushing disruptive kids away, I began to seek them out. I began to bring them into my world. I read every book I could find. I kept notes. I ran experiments. I kept notes on the experiments. And then she kind of pulled herself up and said, today, I am the key to every door. When there's a disruptive, troubled kid in the school, they say, give her to Miss So-and-so. She seems to know what to do with them. That's a profoundly important story. It's a story of transformative learning. When I have a higher purpose, I find the energy and the courage to go outside my comfort zone. Now, the second story is a lot closer to home. I once had a daughter. She was single. She was living in Washington, D.C. She had reached that point in life where she said, there's not a good man left on the earth. And then she found one, and she got really excited. Relationship grew. And then one day our phone rang. She's talking to her mother, and I know what's going on. This guy just dumped her. This daughter is the firstborn child. Many firstborn children share a common characteristic. If they're miserable, they want you to be miserable too. Okay? And she said, I'm coming home this weekend. I thought, oh, no. Her mother hangs up and says, you're the father, you go to the airport and pick her up. So the next day I go pick her up. She gets in the car and she doesn't say, hello, how are you? She says, that no good, dirty, da-da-da-da-da. 5 minutes later, she takes a breath. And I said, are you problem solving or purpose finding? We're finally pulling in the driveway. She takes another breath. I say it again. She says, what are you talking about? And she said, this is the real world. I said, well, I think it applies to the real world. By then we're in the house. I pull out a sheet of paper out of my file, and it says, Robert Quinn, life statement. She looks at it, and then she grows kind of quiet. And she looks up and says, when you feel bad, you read this? I said, no. When I feel bad, I rewrite it. It's been rewritten hundreds of times. She said, yeah, I can hardly understand some of this stuff. I said, yeah, it's written to a customized audience, one person. Then the first miracle happened. She said, do you think I could write one of these? And I said, I'm sure you can. She went in the bedroom. For a day and a half, she worked on her life statement. The miracle was, I did not have to suffer during that day. Right? She got on the plane. She flew home to D.C. A couple days passed. I get an email. She said, he called me. Oh, this will be interesting. And she says, so I wrote him this letter. And I'm reading this letter that she's attached. It's incredibly vulnerable, open, honest. And then at the bottom it says, and my roommate said I can't give this to him. Now that's an interesting thing. Why can't we give this letter to this guy? You don't tell some guy that dumped you that, here's how you feel. And then she said, what my roommates don't understand is that what he thinks doesn't matter. Whoa, wait a minute. A few days ago, what he thought caused her life to shatter. Now she's saying, what he thinks doesn't matter. She's saying, this is who I really am. Didn't know this a while ago. Now I know it. It doesn't matter what other people think. You see, when you clarify your purpose, you take back your external locus of control where you worry about what other people think, and you take an internal locus. You don't become insensitive, you don't become rebellious, you become centered. You become powerful. Now here's the interesting thing. In the next few months, she began to be promoted. Her career turned. Why? This was a dating breakup. Why is her career taking off? Because when you find purpose and meaning in what you're doing in one area of your life, it grows in every area of life because you are one person. That company had a woman coming in with the same dresses on, body looked the same, but it wasn't the same employee. This was a woman now full of leadership for the first time. When someone has that meaning and that integrity, things start to change. The research says when you give up self-interested goals, where most of us are most of the time, and you take on contributive goals, you function differently. The biology changes, the thought process changes. Learning accelerates, you grow more. The only thing that I'm left to conclude is you and I are designed to be purpose-seeking mechanisms. You've been shaped by life. You've had bad experiences and good experiences. And both the bad experiences and the good experiences are there to teach you something about you. And if you look very carefully at those, you can determine what your purpose is. Every person in this room can clarify the purpose of their life, become the key to every door.
Mike screamed, "Grenade out!" and jumped on it, and boom! 2 snipers were providing overwatch for the other platoon that were trying to maneuver. And unbeknownst to Mike and those guys, an insurgent had seen where they were firing, had snuck up next to the side of that building, pulled out a hand grenade, pulled it, and threw it up, and that thing came right up, boom, and hit Mike on the chest. Petty Officer Mike Mansour took the entirety of that blast in his face and his chest. He lasted for another 35 minutes before he passed away on the medevac bird out. The kicker to this story is there was a stairwell right next to him. And all he had to do was jump down that stairwell to save his own life, but he didn't. He turned and jumped on the grenade, sacrificing himself so his 2 brothers could both go home and hug their wives, kiss their children, and fight another day. I want you to think to yourself, what would you do? For 70 years, United States Navy SEAL team, we've been pushing the envelope. We've been setting the bar. We've been setting the standard for what the team life is and how you should live. Are you really committed to yourself physically? Because we all know when the going gets tough, the more in shape, the more focused you are on what you eat and what you consume, the better you are. I spent 15 months in the frigid waters of the Pacific Ocean, to the mountains of Afghanistan on 7 different occasions, and to the shores of Haiti doing missionary work with my church. And what I've learned in this incredible journey are a few undeniable truths about what enables us to succeed. Now, truth number 1 is you got fear in your heart always, and you can't defeat it. Everybody's like, well, that's a bummer. The problem is, ladies and gentlemen, is you're wired for fear, right? It's part of our lives. We have it in what we do for a living, right? You talk about fear in your lives and your personal lives with your family. Folks, we've got fear, period. So what you have to learn to do is embrace it. Truth 1. The second one is self-confidence is huge. It's important, and you got to forge it every single day. The third one is you got to live with purpose. If you don't have purpose in your life, you don't have momentum. You don't have anything driving you forward, anything pulling you out of bed every single day. And the last one And the one I learned that left an indelible mark, not only in my heart, but in my soul, on those beaches across the street over there, is nobody does it alone. There's not a single person in this whole room right now that can raise their hand and say, you know what, Rut, I've done it by myself. Not a single person out there has helped me, not a one. We all need help. So as a result of that, you have to recognize that you have to live what I call a team. You have to be 100% focused that everything you think about, everything you do is with someone else, is with a team. Amen, right? We've been giving everything we are to our communities, to our families, to our children. But more importantly, we're willing to give everything we are and potentially everything we will ever be for the man that's next to us. This is the team life. This is what my mission here is today, is to help you understand this standard, to help you redefine your understanding of what that mission might look like for you. Are you working on it? Are you working on it right now? Did you work on it today? Are you going to go work on it tonight? Because I tell you, with those three things, you're on the road to commitment. I've worked with every kind of person there is on this planet. We all bleed red. What I care about is there's something that gets you out of bed every morning. There's something that you have faith in that's bigger than yourself. There's something that you're willing to sacrifice for another human being. That's powerful.
It's just a trouble trying to climb the ladder up there. Living in a world where everything must stand. It's to the death, but I'll face that death with courage, and I just won't be discouraged. I'm determined to see to reach my goal. Now I'm gonna cross so many things that could block me, but I made up my mind. Oh, nothing's gonna stop me. This life is nothing but a test, and I made a step, and there's just no limit to all the great things I can do. I see my possibility. Just hope something found in here in me. Nothing but green up ahead of me. I'm looking for the job strike to the head of the back of my mind. I'm for the vision of my destiny. And it keeps me on the fire. Because I know what this I need is so much more than I can see. It's so much that I can become. That's why I'm reaching for the sun. I see my possibility. Just hope that I'm here in me. Nothing but green like the head of me. I'm looking for the jump track to the head of the back. I see my
All right. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu Alaikum. And to my co-host, the returning Shiro, Haja
MashaAllah.
Kamila Mahasan Shu'aib is in the building.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa
Hold on,
rahmatullahi
let
wa
me get my
barakatuh.
couple of other things going on off. All right, go for it. What we got?
Saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Happy to be here.
Alhamdulillah, it's good to and wonderful to have you here. But let me before I get away, I got to do special acknowledgement of this the recorded birthday of our great and noble leader Imam W Mohammed Rahimahullah. This day, October 30th, 1933. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, we're 33. Alhamdulillah. This day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him to the planet.
Yeah.
He did his work, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called him back. And we are better because of it. Alhamdulillah. So we want
Yes. Alhamdulillah.
to acknowledge that. Yeah. So you already know what our day is about. Let me let the folks know what's going on. So it's all about purpose today. It's every day actually. It's about purpose. This broadcast day, finding your purpose in life, and the significance of finding that purpose. Just so important. I mean, there's a certain amount of things that just become cliches, but you have to be careful not to allow the power of something to escape you just because I heard that. I've been hearing that, and I hear this.
Yeah.
If you haven't done it, you haven't realized it, then you're not getting the benefit of it, because I mean, after that, okay, so now therefore you will do what? You know
What? Yeah.
Okay, set that over there. Okay, now what you gonna do? So see, all those kind of things are little mind traps. That I can call them now with that example. Mental grenades. That blow up your energy. Blow up, mean not in a good way, but destroy it. So that's it. So you've been traveling, and most immediately you've been traveling in states and out of states. It seems like every move you make have a out of the country move, and then the reset move bring you back into the country, touchdown somewhere else, and then boom, you blast up back over here. And the way that series kind of closed out for you yesterday with the big event that happened. I'm gonna let you give all the names and titles, etc. But a big women's event having to do with diversity and self-empowerment and healing and all that. We want to get that too for the people who haven't had the benefit of what was going on there. So I'm gonna drop my little gems and jewels if I see some some low hanging fruit. And I'm gonna throw it into the conversation, but it's your conversation. We want to drink from the well of your experience and what you've done and why you've done what you've done and what you are, looking forward to, and all of that kind of stuff. So, you know what the layout is. So you can go ahead, start wherever you want to start. Bismillah.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. It's when you make a decision, because I'm hoping we're going to make this a conversation, right? Not me just talking, but okay, good. Just making sure, because the thing that I recognize that I'm a forever student. No, that wasn't for you to go away. I was saying I want you to be a part of the conversation, Baba.
Well, I'm trying to be like AB Roll, ABC TV Media, where the camera is focused on you. Then I come back when I need to be in the camera. So I'm working the studio angle now, but it's good. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that when you make this decision, the biggest thing that I said when I started out the weekend, because the weekend was about empowering ourselves, mind, body, and spirit, while the intersection of diversity within the cultures as Bilalians and the Turkish community, because this was the particular community that we were trying to, create nations and tribes so that we would learn from one another. Like this was the space
Mhm.
as women and understanding what sisterhood looks like for us within our community, and then as the human family of as Muslim women. And so it
Give a
was
give
it
a
was
give a
open and
quick
very.
give a quick shot of the origins of it, because Masjid Orthine or you and I we were not the genesis of the event, so we want to make sure that proper
Yes. So
attribution is made for.
yeah, Layla Muhammad, the daughter of Imam W.D. Muhammad Rahimahullah, is a part of a nonprofit organization that creates different events for um, to bridge the gap of communication between the different cultural entities within here in America, and how do we create ways to better understand how we are able to thrive as a human family, as Muslims here in America, and be of a support and a safe space for each other. So the topics changed basically in different areas based on the needs of the particular community that it is that she's meeting. And she facilitates the conversations and connects with other leadership in the area to organize the event. And then she comes in, facilitates the conversation, creates the program around it. And then the feedback of the women that are within the area, they are part of the planning portions of it. So that's really what it was. Um, it was very free flowing. It had an organization, but what Layla did beautifully is that she wanted to honor, the spirit led movement of the room, because she may have had something on the agenda, but this came up as something that the population of the women really wanted to talk about, and so she would hold space for it, and then putting in their spaces for healing and conversation and celebration. We had a beautiful fashion show, and we did a poetry reading, and the women from both communities, they brought food that represented who they were. So shout out to Vegan Delight Zainab. Nasir, who did some juices, and she made some like next level bean soup, right? Like next level. She said, yeah, I tweaked the recipe a little bit, so we had that. We had some bean pies from Papa's Bean Pies. Then we had other sweets from Delightful Foods, and then the designs were of the classic ELE OGs and newcomer fashions that was shared from us. And so it was just a beautiful expression of how much women we are seeking to create more spaces and togetherness in a safe space of conversation and worship. So that was like my best way of kind of like tying it in a bow of the event. So for me, you know, I when I first start speaking, and I was saying to mom, I said I got to learn how to, like you, to just push record every time when I go, just automatically push record. I think because I'm getting used to being in more spaces and speaking publicly, I haven't built up that automatic response to just record.
Mhm.
But the key things that I brought up is that though I was raised in a Muslim household, I still had to shahada. I had to find my shahada, and I had to find it in a way that I felt connected to this declaration, that I felt connected to the ideal of being Muslim, and so this journey of better understanding myself. It's like it's so very hard to summarize the journey, but the key point is I'm always searching for what that is. When I start to feel feelings to where I may not be happy, or I'm stressed out, or joy isn't happening, or my life is not adding up the way that I feel that it should be adding up. And I don't mean in an artificial way, meaning that, I should be married by now, I should have a house by now. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, are you happy and satisfied and pleased with your life? Just regardless of what the things are you happy and satisfied with who you are, right? And when those kinds of questions come up, asking the why, what do I need to do? How can I make this better? And these aha moments, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, will show up with every Ramadan, So through the years, there's always this pivotal moment of Ramadan. And I think the reason why I'm kind of even editing myself and sharing this part of it is because I'm trying to remember the process of knowing. Because, like, what I'm sharing with you right now is a culmination of years of activities and experiences and emotional pitfalls, and I'm still figuring out. I mean, if we're still alive, it's just something gonna come up that we're learning this experience, and how powerful the subconscious mind is. And when I say how powerful the subconscious mind is that I was always in a community where, just in being in the environment, though I may not have understood what was happening and what I was seeing in the interactions of the community, or hearing lectures from growing up, going to the convention every year and hearing the imam. And at the time it was just kind of like, how long are we going to be in here till we get to the lobby? But my body is there and the language is still getting in there, even though my young self was like, okay, when am we gonna be free so I can go hang out with my friends in the lobby? But it was like all of these seeds were being planted, and I wasn't in my body wasn't in connection with recognizing when they were starting to sprout, right? Until there was a moment where you get squeezed. There's this pressure that's on your life that you want more. That you should desire more and seek out more. And so my this ideal of purpose for me can always change. And the reason why I say it can always change, because I'm an artist. There was a time where I made jewelry. There was a time where I painted. There's a time where I did music. There's a time where I did theater. Like, artistry, it's like I'm looking for this expression, right? And so I thought that my purpose was to go into theater, to be a script writer, like do whatever it takes to do. But then Allah would shift me. It would be, like, look at this. So then I started to do other things. I've always been a creative spirit. But ultimately, I'm just going to fast forward. That the fast forward was, there was a time in my life where I wanted to understand why, when I listened to, like, I love music. I love music, and I love music for its lyrics first, before even the beats. And I asked myself the question of, why is it that when I listen to a song, like, it can move me so much emotionally that it would drive me to tears? Like, it would just move me to activate, it would motivate me to do things. Yet my relationship, I didn't feel comfortable knowing that I didn't have that same relationship with the Quran. So it sent me on this journey. Like, I want to understand, because it's like, I had to check with myself. Do you believe that this is the word of Allah? And there was never a point where I was like, no, even though I didn't understand it, didn't know how to, there wasn't something in me that said, well, read the Bible and see if that do something. It never entered my mind. It was like, yeah, no, I believe it, because when I hear the khutbahs and they quote this and they say that, it's like, oh, they're merging life situations and experiences. So I was like, I want that kind of experience with the Quran. And so that started me on this journey of really understanding what that relationship looks like, because I didn't want the words of anything else to move me in a way stronger than Allah's words. It's like, I want to be moved by God's words. And and so alhamdulillah for Imam Muhammad, because he introduced the community, humanity, to the practical applications of how to go into this revelation. Because I would hear other people talk about what their experiences were, and I thought there was something wrong with me because I was like, that it doesn't happen for me that way, and I want it to. I want it to happen for me that way. And so in those moments, I could feel my life being rocked in so many different ways that it was like, I know there's got to be an answer. So when I hit that bottom rung of it, and I was like, okay, well, then you know what, God, if anything, I just want to be happy. And that's when I found I'm cleaning up my room. I saw a movie called The War, The War Room, where it was like it's this
Yeah.
Christian movie. The
Yeah.
woman,
Yeah.
she was talking about her prayers and everything else, and I was just like, yeah. So I said, well, let me just go and make me something like that in my new little. I got a little
Mhm.
cubby of an apartment, and I wanted to create a sacred space where I made prayer like this is the space where nothing else happens in this little corner but Salat. I wanted a nice little rug. I made it pretty. I just did that because I this is where I'm going to come in my house and commune and have Salat. And so as I was cleaning up and doing all the things in my teeny tiny apartment, um, when I was moving the box, transcript fell from my closet, and the transcript was finding happiness for the four conflicts, right? And at the time, you just kind of like, oh, you still in the mind of the coincidence. That's the mind you in. Like you're in the mind of coincidence and not in the mind of, for me, in the mind of, okay, Allah's answering what you asked for, right? You start to put it together as it goes. It's like, oh, you know. And so something in me inspired to say that every day we're gonna spend a little bit of time every single day reading through this transcript. And um and so in doing that, it helped me to understand. I started to put the puzzle pieces together from things that I learned from you about bliss, things that I learned from the Imam about, the uniqueness and the universe and all of these different things. And so now I had all the puzzle pieces, but this transcript helped me to put them in place, like to really place them out. And so I studied it, and it just changed the trajectory of how I would do things. And it became uncomfortable and scary because I started to recognize things. It was like being unplugged from the matrix. I was seeing things in my life like, this is how this works. This is how you listen. Like, who's talking? Is this your highest self, or is this the three nafs, right? So now I'm listening for, well, what it do? If it sounds like this, then it's this. If it sounds like that, that's the one. You listen to that one more. So I was going through life paying attention to those things happening. And you and I had a conversation when it really hit me with the aha moment about how this works, and I just started to do it more. And we had dinner at the house, and mom had cooked, and for everybody, and she was tired, and I was tired, and then I was leaving out the kitchen, and something said to me, wash the dishes. And I'm like, my body is like, yo, I'm ready to go. It's tired. Everybody gone, they sleep. Can I come back and do it tomorrow? And it was like, no, go ahead and wash the dishes. And so because I was making this commitment to like, I was being the science project to see like how this taps in. I was like, okay, well then we'll be about to wash these dishes. And so I did. And I got done and I was there, and I'm getting back in my car. And as I was driving home, and said, this is how it works. Because I got energy, like what my body was feeling and trying to tell me to do. I was listening to, this is where the blessing is. Just do this, show gratitude. Like, the gratitude is not about you doing it for your mother. It's about, stretching yourself to be like, I'm telling you to do something that is good. Are you going to pay attention? And so I did. And so I just cried. I just wept and cried hard, because it was at that point when it's like, when you hear it, when in the Quran it says we hear and we obey, what exactly are you hearing and obeying? Like the best parts of it. And that kind of turned this, even my intuitive sense on, it turned on this need for that. And so I started to go down the tracking of understanding, like the new language for me was just like understanding spirit. And it's like, with understanding what that means Quranically and how the Imam would talk about it, it's still unfolding as time goes on. And I don't have the baggage of the church. I don't have the baggage of church language or anything else. I only know by what it is that the Quran says about it and how it shows up, that it doesn't spook me out. So when we speak to those that have had church experiences, they immediately want to attack you on this idea about spirit, when Allah was very clear. It says, I breathed into them of my spirit, then bow down, but not so Iblis. And so so it's like, when I have this intriguing question in my mind about what this looks like in this journey, and this the feeling of paying attention and reading the environment, I wanted to explore all parts of what that looks like. And so this journey is, I think, because I'm still in the midst of it, I just pay attention to wherever it is that Allah wants to lead me. And I just, these little notes right here, just even from what we were just listening to, is that it's like, when you identify who Allah is to you, that ultimately, we have been taught, the society has been taught that, Allah doesn't want the best for you, that God is like standing over you, waiting for you to make a mistake. Like, it's like, yeah, make a mistake so I can do this thing to you. And it was like, what kind of madness is that, to have that mindset when it comes to God? And when there's something that we're moving towards or seeking out, that Allah gives you all of the resources to lead you back to Him. Like, I'm gonna give you this stuff, because at the end of this life, the goal is to make it back to where we came from, to go back to who has brought us here. We're not trying to go anywhere else other than back. So the signs are just show us the straight way. Straight way where? Right? Show us the straight way, the way of those upon whom you have bestowed your grace. Okay, so there's a conversation happening every time, because I want to get back to you. And so if you're providing me the resources to do that, I'm gonna listen to myself and say, is this gonna lead me back to where I came from? Because I want to come, and in doing so, you come back pleased and pleasing, right? That is where the happiness is. That is where the purpose is. And that part of it for me is what has led me to be like, I want to explore this planet, but the exploration starts here. The other note I wrote for myself when I was meditating is that, I want to get to know me better so that I may get to know you. It's like, I have
Let
to
me
know you.
stop you. Let
Yes,
me.
go ahead.
I'm gonna stop right there and share something right at this point that I wanted to share during this time, and this seems to be a right time. It's just a little parable, right? A little
Yeah.
picture that we've shared on other occasions, but it syncs up with what you're speaking to right now. Let's see. No, that's not it. Oh, come on. Okay, now find that window. Desktop. Almost there. Hold on. Yes.
No worries.
It's okay. So, and now I understand why people have two computers or two screens.
The little flat screens that
That's like,
fold out.
you got to overlap everything.
The Star
But
Trek
I want to,
dashboard.
I want to share this. Now, we've done this on another occasion, coming out of understanding the idea of isomorphism. I'm not going to stay there. I'm not going to try to explain any of those other things. I'm just going to read the little story here, a story that many people have heard, but this is critical. So, an executive is busy working in his home office when his 6-year-old son comes in and starts asking him to play. After much persistence, followed by much frustration, the executive pulls out a magazine, opens it to a large fold-out map of the world. Pulling out the map, he cuts it into hundreds of tiny pieces and gives them to his son. Here, son, after you put together this map of the world, then I'll play with you. Knowing that the 6-year-old has no idea what a map of the world looks like, he assumed that this task would keep his son busy for at least a couple of hours. But 10 minutes later, his son came back into the office and said, "All done, Daddy." The executive thought his son was exaggerating, but upon going into the living room, the entire map was perfectly assembled. The father asked his son, "Son, how on earth did you figure out how to do this so quickly?" "It was easy, Daddy." The boy began turning over the pieces one at a time. And as he did, his father saw that on the other side of the world map was a photograph of a man. "You see, Daddy, when you put the man together, the whole world falls into place." And so that's a parable. It's like you get yourself together, then you can get the world together. And you can find, when you find yourself, you find your world, right? So that I wanted to share that. So I'm let me see this. Stop screen.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
that like the way that my mind works is because of the tools that the community has made available to me, that I think in abstracts. I'm a very abstract thinker. And yes, it has made it very difficult for me to communicate with people in many ways, because what I'm seeing is not, I don't just trust just what I'm seeing. It's like it is what's on the back of the, like they may be seeing a map, right? But I'm seeing the man on the other side of the map, right? And that for me is how I move. But I know that that's my artist brain that moves in that way. And also I was never disconnected from imagination. So this to have a creative brain where I imagine what would it be like to be in the ocean, and how like I could spend time there in those thoughts, right? And that has been my company and has nurtured me from a child up into adulthood. But there are things, and there's another, and I'm gonna find that article, and maybe it might have been you that shared it, where they were testing like young people, and then over time they saw how the creativity diminished as they got older. Was that you that shared it? They were doing a
that wasn't me,
study.
but I get it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so it changed their adulthood the more that when they went to school, and it kind of, and as they got older, those parts were removed, right? But the thing about that, which also is a part of it, is like I recognize that that what Allah does is so very intentional and so very purposeful, that when I think about most leaders and leadership, like ones who have made great impacts, they've had daughters. Their first child is daughter, right? And I know
Alhamdulillah.
that we are we as women, we hold a lot of feelings. Like we are really water. So when the Imam talks about what water is, like we really are that. And my desire has been to, and I think that I want to pass it to you to better explain, because I understand it in my lingo, but to really understand this idea of spirit, right? This idea of the feel and the balancing out of the emotions and the feelings. Because when you said well, that was an example I gave yesterday, right? So when we say
Hmm.
spiritual well, that it has to be a container that allows us to get
Hmm.
the benefits out. It doesn't just run free, because if it just goes to run free, you're gonna get some contaminants. It's gonna be a problem. You know what I'm saying? When we think about Hagar, and she had to create some, give it some boundaries, some things that puts it in order for us to get the benefits of it, that there is a structure that if we let our emotions take over, it makes it very difficult to function, right? So I see
Hmm.
Islam as a way that gives it structure for me, because I can feel things like deeply, and if I don't get the tools necessary to say, okay, look, let's put some logic on this and keep yourself together. I know that my peers that I grew up with, who are born and raised Muslim, and African Americans in particular, because we are called the soul people, right? Soul food, soul music, so like all of these things, that there was something that had took us away from how do we still use it in its proper context, because that has not been the relationship that we have been afforded as Bilalians. Because when we do it as Bilalians, our culture is always shunned and sat to the side, whereas other cultures, they hang on to all of their things. They got their whirling dervishes, they have their, the different dances, they have their certain musics and they can do. But then when we show up with ours, then it's like, oh no, it's a hard no, for us to express
Hmm.
who we are and what we are. And I think that I know that my artist part of my core, is seeking a way to express, artistically and beautifully, what Allah has given us, because we don't have the baggage of cultural, like the culture, right? And the culture that's being given to
Hmm.
us right now is not what has come from an authentic and wholesome spirit. It comes from a capitalistic lens, right? Like, okay, well, this is all we'll give the African Americans to say this is their culture, because we can't, when they say go home, where is that? Where's go home for us? It doesn't exist. So we have the ability now, running, that the Quran filters what's okay and what's not okay, what works for us, and how do we express that. There are definitely components that are genetically connected to us. So when we think about, within our community, when Brother Rashid went from the American drum to the African drum, it was a whole nother experience, right? Because we have rights to it, but now it's in another context. It's like, this is what this looks like. And so for me in the traveling, it's, I want to see all of the things, because there is a very spiritual context of
Tell
really.
us, tell us the places that you shot. Costa Rica was one place, and Cuba was the last. Just a week ago
Yes.
or so, you were there for a week or so. So in terms of the traveling, just so as to identify which the spaces. Then of course you come
So
back. And you had stop in Atlanta, and then stop in
yeah.
other venues. But go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. So with Costa Rica, it was strictly nature. If we did very little, if any, interaction with the people. We were in the rainforest, and it was an opportunity to, study nature and meditate in the space where, like, when you are sitting near and amongst the ocean, what do you understand the ocean to be for you and for your life? This is like the conversation is like, when we look at the ocean is a port of transportation, it connects life and it holds life, like holds big life. It's a whole nother, we busy going to the sky. There's a whole nother universe of life within it, right? So what are the things that from ourselves that we want to release out in order for it to find its way to you? Like this is like in an abstract form of understanding, and then for us to find the peace in the waters, right? And so I think that for me with waters, like everything about us, from wudu, from how it allows things to grow, the taste of, we went to salty waters, and then we went to sweet waters, to the rivers, right? And then watching the trees and the rain that came from this. There was a lot of water happening in Costa Rica. That wasn't a part of the plan, but it was a part of our conversation. What does that look like, and we ate just plant-based food, and how that made us feel different, eating food that was farmed, naturally, with no added the things, right?
No, no GMOs, no, Franken
no
food
GMO.
and all the rest of that. Yeah,
it was 100% like organic to, and all the food was that no meat, no flesh was consumed. It was all plant based, and what that did to the makeup of our bodies being in that space. And then also we did something called the natives in Costa Rica does something called a cacao ceremony, and cacao is like the raw chocolate, not the colonized chocolate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the cacao,
not Hershey's, chocolate,
not Hershey's,
no Snickers,
not Hershey's chocolate. Right. So, but the indigenous people used cacao as an opportunity for, like, the heart. They call it a heart opener, meaning that it makes a way for you to structurally feel the feelings and communicate, like, with yourself, like this self-love, like, what do you need? So now you're open to having this conversation with the heart. And this is what the indigenous people, this was the practice, and that he was sharing the story about the cacao ceremonies. And so we did that, and that was the most beautiful thing for me. Now, was that cacao nasty? It was nasty. It did not taste like what we've been used to, but they see it as medicine, right? And so I was just like, yeah, did not taste that great. But he said, you set an intention. And that's what I loved about every one of these trips. They say, make your intention. I said, y'all talking my language. Yeah, make your intention. That's good. I could do that. And so, and making your intention before you consume anything. They were saying that, say that with the food. When you eat your food, make your intention for the food. What do you want this food to do for you and for your body? So it's like they wanted to connect us as a part of the ecosystem in every way, where we're walking, the food we're consuming, the things that we take in visually, all of that. And as a result, you do become very intuitively sensitive to the environment as a result of it. So, I kept my tools.
Let me mention this. Let me mention this in conjunction with that. Bilal, the name Bilal, the way Imam Muhammad gives the, let's just call it the metaphysical etymology of the word itself. Bilal means one who is environmentally aware. One who is environmentally aware, and you can get that right out. I mean, of course, with his hints and direction, because Bilal is the first muezzin, right? He's the first muezzin, right? And so and what he makes is the adhan, right? He makes the adhan, and when you make the adhan, you're supposed to have your hands up to your ears, and actually, as some say, you should actually stick a finger in the ear, because then you're hearing the sound by bone conduction, etc., inside of your head, and you're also hearing it and projecting it outside, right? And when you come to the ear, the name for the ear in Lughat al-Arabiya is uzun. Uzun, that's the ear. Uzun is the ear, and the call that you're making called the adhan, right? It's the adhan. So Bilal was the first. So the first idea is to pay attention, to be environmentally aware. And when you make the adhan, you don't just stay facing forward. You turn to the right, cover that. Turn to the left, cover that. So being totally attentive to your environment, totally aware
Yes.
of your environment. So that's built into the rituals in our way of life, the rich jewels in our life,
The
right?
rich jewels.
All right.
Yeah, and so
Mhm.
I know that as Bilalians, there we have the Imam Rashad. This is like Imam Rashad had a post on Instagram
Imam Rashad of
and
the Atlanta
from
community right
Atlanta,
now.
out of the Atlanta
Okay.
Masjid. And
Mhm.
and I loved it because he said in the Quran there's no description of the prophets and messengers. Like they're not telling you the features of the. It's not. We're not
Mhm.
describing what they look. We're looking at their
Mhm.
character. We're looking at how they,
Mhm.
show up. And I was like, it helps me. It helps to understand like the relationship to it is that we need to be able to see ourselves in it. This is what I'm saying. Like that was what he said, and I'm saying
Mhm.
like, yeah, because we need to be able to see ourselves. Yet we know that in the last, the last speech of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned not being, to negate the leadership of those whose skin is darker, right? He made it a
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
because he knew that this was a problem within the community, made it a point to say that, treat him, that there's equity and equality here. And we know that Bilal was Abyssinian, it's like just dark, very dark skin, right? And we know that Hagar was an African woman, right? Because it's easy for us to be erased from some narratives that we have to understand what it is. But only Allah made it accessible for us to know that. Allah made it accessible. It's like,
Mhm.
well,
Yeah.
we're gonna know, you need to know this, right? So when you say
Right.
this about
Right.
Bilal, and you say this about like the when you connect that this came to him in a dream, that the adhan came within a dream, that we have been taught to disconnect ourselves from those parts of ourselves that allow us to really connect with our soul. Like, that once we get a hold of a thing, it's going next level. They did a thing when they allowed us to
Mm.
get on the tennis court. It's going next level.
Mm.
They did a thing when they allowed us to get in the orchestra and play the classical music. We did a thing. And so
Yeah.
there's something about that we have to put the proper construct on it in our spiritual life, that here we are now in Islam, in this beautiful gift
Mhm.
of this way of life.
Ballet, golf,
Just name it.
gymnastics. It's like, don't let them in there. Don't let them in there.
Don't let them
Baseball,
in.
basketball, football. It's like, man. Okay, go ahead.
And the scholarship of Islam.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so when we have this moment, that it changes the trajectory to where it elevates us in a way that we are reading life very differently. We are the only Bilalians are the only ones that when we mention someone who was passed on, that from the leadership of Imam Muhammad, that we say Rahim Allah. Who says that? We
Mm-hmm.
do, right? And in us
Mm-hmm.
understanding and doing that, it's a whole nother level of how we, absorb this way of life. But there are parts of it that so many are seeking to keep us disconnected from, that we want to go back to our original self. But Allah did us a deal that we have the Quran right now to sift out what they, I was telling Layla yesterday, I said, this is what I did on this trip, but I'm telling you, I know how to fillet a fish very, very well. Like, what it's like, this part of the fish I can eat, this part of the fish I can't eat. And I said, I'm good on that. I'm clear. And so I pay attention to the environment. So here we are at Cuba, just to move fast forward in Cuba. These are women that we have held space with each other for almost 2 years now. We just meet virtually monthly, and we just talk about our lives and our growth and spiritually and all of these different things. And I had, I made it like really clear. I'm like, the Quran is my book. I'm a Muslim. This is what I do. I want to understand, I want to understand my people as a whole. But I know there's a reason I'm supposed to be on this trip, because I felt it in my heart that, like, you need to go and experience this. You need to go on this trip. And then so I realized these are women that I've all been around, that there's about 50% of them who were either Muslim or were once practicing Muslims. And I was like, oh, this is interesting, right? Because they're seeking this spiritual connection. And I'm like, no, I'm clear about God. I'm clear about this way of life. I'm clear. Like, I don't need anything to, I'm trying to better understand me. Like, what are these things that move me in a way where I want to meet the people? I want to eat the food. I want to understand the transatlantic slave trade. And that, because in Cuba, they look like you and me. Like, I was expecting to see less melanated people. They are dark. Like, they're dark, like Nigerian, Sudanese dark all over Cuba. And they have many different practices that are a mixture of all of the different cultures, yet they all identify that there's only one God. And I was like, well, I didn't know this. And on top of that, when they begin their prayers or their ceremonies, they start with Salaam Alaikum, but they don't identify as Muslim, right? And so in me asking the question about, the different ceremonies, so some of the ceremonies is just like they're in prayer. The prayer is very much so internal. There's a time when you go to, what did we do? We went to a gathering where we talked about those who are ancestrally connected to us. And then the young guy, who is considered like the way we would probably identify a hafiz, right? And this was right after my conversation. He comes into the room and his name is Oba Ephraim. And I was like, got my son's name. And he was like, I never knew what that name means, because he said my dad was French. He told me where his mom was from, and this has just been the name that's been on the family line. And so I had told him what I understand, so as far as it's Abraham, so so his accent was saying like Ephraim, right? And when he came out, they covered their hair. Everyone covers their head in white. It's like they keep their head covered. And he said, I couldn't find my hat. And he pulled out a hat, and it was a kufi. And I was like, okay, Allah. Like, all right. So I told him, I said, what made you pick up that hat? He said, I couldn't find my other one. This is the one I said, okay, so now let's talk. That's when I told him, I said, so now let's talk. And he was like, yeah, let's talk, and it was a beautiful conversation that we exchanged information with each other about each other that we could not have ever known. And so it made me think about the Imam's relationship with the folklore, right? That there was a communication that was taking place that better helped to connect, that, we're here to serve God, and God is the priority. And the way that when I say that, I understand that the angels that we have access to be of service to us, that yes, go.
I'm jumping on a point that you were just talking about. You're talking about the spiritual connection. You talk about Imam W, Mohammed, and the folklore, and we're talking about world travel. So alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, I was blessed to travel with the Imam to Rome on the occasion where he spoke. At St. Peter's Square, is it St. Peter's Square? Whatever it is, the Vatican, the Plaza, whatever, to the world. Alhamdulillah, and I was blessed to be with them at what is this? It's the Pope's summer palace. That's what it was. Yeah. And so we were sitting down having dinner. It wasn't super elaborate like some Queen Victoria but yeah, it was nice. That's what they call it. And so we're sitting there, and Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, I'm sitting with the Imam there, and everybody's being served, whatever we're having the dinner, the breakfast, etc. And so they brought the Imam a dish, and they didn't bring that dish to anybody else. That dish. I heard this in Kim Kardashian's birthday the other day. She went somewhere, and there's a place where this particular chicken dish is only made for the owner, but because of her, to honor her presence at the spot on her birthday, she got the chicken, right? Okay, so it's like, but that's only for her. Nobody else gets it, right? Okay, so in this case, we're in Rome with the Imam, and they brought something to the Imam. There was a dessert of sorts, and so they sat down in front of him, and it was applesauce. It was applesauce, and it was chunky applesauce with like a cinnamon kind of sprinkle on it. And the Imam turns to me, or he's talking to the table as well, saying, "You see, these people have a very special spiritual connection." He said, "This is what I loved. This is from my mother. My mother would make me this very dish, the chunky applesauce with the spicing on it. And they're letting me know we got you. We're connected." So that spiritual connection is real, and it's just transcendent. And that has to do with like the water you're talking about. It's like the consciousness is coextensive with the universe itself, and there are no boundaries for it, right? One more thing about Imam Muhammad and intuitive connection. This is no boast, but I had on the occasions when I spent time with the Imam when he was here in residence, he would teach me as we rode, right? And so we got to a point in one day, to abbreviate the story, we got to a point in one day. I'll tell the longer story later, but I asked the Imam the question. I said, is it possible for two people to communicate telepathically? Is it possible for two people to communicate telepathically? He said, yes, it is possible for two people to communicate telepathically, but they have to be at the same level of purity, and they have to be committed to the same project. If they're committed to the same project and at the same level of purity, that's when you see that frequency, that resonance, that communication, that wavelength. So you're able to tune in to, okay, they're on that channel. And since you're on that channel, then you can communicate on that channel. So it does have to do it. So all those reasons have to do with being clear on what your purpose is. And also being clear, spiritually speaking. Doesn't mean that you have to be a monk or a nun, or no disrespect to any of them, or that you're going to have a life without sin or shortcomings. No, that's not the case.
Right.
You can. The only thing the Imam is, as he said, the only thing you can perfect is your intention to obey Allah. You can't perfect your behavior. Right. You want to try to be better. You always want to improve. You always want to, but you're always going to fall short somewhere. That's the nature of it. But in terms of perfecting your intention, that's the key. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so I think that for me, it's been, I know that's me editing my brain, right? I know that our community is evolving. We're evolving, we're growing, but I know that there's some conversations that not everyone is ready to have. Right?
No, that's stuff that I didn't say just now. I said, I ain't gonna say no. I'm just saying, I'm just bearing witness. It's like, and I do talk to a few people in our community. Said, okay, we talk because we can have this conversation, but most people, in our association, it's kind of like, you need to move the calendar up in your mindset. But go ahead.
So I know that for me, there are, there used to be a time where I wasn't okay with keeping it to myself. It was just kind of, but Allah made it clear. It's like, folks ain't ready to hear it. Like, you doing yourself a disservice to share all of the things, right? You got to be, it's like you have the capacity to understand it and see it for yourself. The best I could do is, like, I always point people in the direction of the Quran, because the Quran prepares the heart. It prepares the heart and it prepares the mind for this life that we're living. And I'm still building. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's like you say, and this is no boast. I'm still figuring it out. But I'm loving the journey of figuring it out, because I know with every fiber of my being that Allah wants the best for me. Like, no one can shake me from the idea of no, even with whatever chaos that's happening around me, even if I fall short, the fact that I recognize the mistake in order to fix it is alhamdulillah. Like, wow, Allah, you gonna give me a chance to get this right. You not gonna have me walking around life carrying this horrible disposition, this horrible character and way of being. You are showing me myself. So this, like, hey, you got to get this right, because I'm inviting those back that is pleasing, right? Like, if you're not pleasing in this life, you can't come back to me not being pleasing, right? And so it's that part of it, that you get another opportunity. You wake up, it's alhamdulillah, okay, I got a chance to get this right, and I'm striving to do so. And Allah will, like, when you cleanse your eyes of what's blocking you from being able to read your life and see what it is that you need to see for yourself, you recognize that the conversation is literally happening all day, every day. It doesn't stop. It's not like business hours, 9 to 5, and then, I'll see you in the morning. No, it's 24/7. And that is the part where, it's like, even if you're not sure, we have tools to help us out with when you're not sure. We have the prayers for where it's not. And then there is a dialogue that is very specific to you and your experience. So when I said to you about when I was in Costa Rica and I saw the frog on my door, that was my language for me. My roommate didn't know. My roommate was like, a frog, right? But when I saw it, I was like, okay, bet. Like, okay, we still flowing, because that's my language. Those are my signs and symbols for me to understand. When he pulled out the kufi, like, you could have had anything else. That was my conversation. I said, okay, she need to know, because she'll be in here acting a plumb fool, like, y'all got me messed up. I ain't doing this, right? So it was like, let me tell it, be a student, and you be present, right? And so it's those moments that I don't take for granted when it does happen and when it does take place. And I love those moments. I love that, that my human gets to have a real conversation, and then paying attention to, like, when that one ayat or that one word comes out, it's like, that means go look at it. And I go look at it, and it gives me more. This is when I said I wanted this relationship with the Quran, because the Quran is like, I call it Quranic couture. Like, it is tailor-made for your life. What's tailor-made for me, if I give you what I have and you put it on, it ain't gonna do the same. It's not gonna be flattering. It's not gonna hit you in all the right places. You got to get your couture. You got to go in there, because your experiences over time, the Imam talks about the water on the eyes. Your sensitivities is what gives you the focus to, when you engage this Quran, you can see yourself in it, and you can take accountability for what you see. And when you see yourself, you may not always be, Maryam. You might end up being Abu Lahab in a season of your life. You might not. You might end up being Pharaoh, and Allah is showing you so that you have an opportunity to correct it in this life, to get yourself together. Go for it.
Alhamdulillah. Well, we're gonna start winding down here.
Oh, it's an hour and a half. Oh my goodness, Dad. I didn't know we went that long.
Oh, no,
I didn't know we went that long.
No apology. Oh no! It's no. It's all good.
Okay.
So alhamdulillah.
Okay.
No. Absolutely no. I just wanted you so you can select uh, your concluding comments. And structure those ideas. But no, alhamdulillah. I mean, that's what it's what we came for today. To get that contact, to get that touch. I'm gonna go ahead and tick through some of the comments that have come in since. But you can go ahead and start winding up the kind of things that you want to leave people with. Okay.
You know, explore the universe of yourself. Explore the universe
Mm-hmm.
of yourself while exploring this life. That this planet, this life that we've given is a gift. It's a gift. It's an opportunity for us to, when Allah says don't forget your share, don't limit it to just when we're talking about money, you know? Like the wealth is so much bigger than the money. There's a value to this
Yeah.
life. And so to not forget your share means to explore, get to know the people, see what it's like. We are in a unique position to where we can gather tools. Like if you read a book, I don't know why this one came to mind, but just, Think and Grow Rich. You could read Think and Grow Rich and get some jewels out of that for you and for your life. That it's the same experience. Why wouldn't you trust going into the Quran to be able to pull out those things that best help you and help your life? So be an explorer of this planet and be an explorer of your inner universe. You will find the happiness, and you will find why Allah has given us this beautiful way of life called Al Islam.
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Yes, so much to be said. We're gonna get to that water consciousness thing, etc. I mean, it's the
Yes,
part of it.
please.
It's part of like Imam Muhammad. Okay, for a long time, Imam Muhammad, he really let's call it mother hen does. He mother hen does. He's sort of like,
Hmm.
okay, y'all, what y'all gotta do? Y'all need to stop listening to them. What you need to just listen to me. Just listen to me, right? Don't be running out there trying to get this, that, and what have you, and don't be necessarily depending on or trusting what somebody else says about what I say. So you have to. So the Imam did encourage an increased level of a serious, a major level of commitment to being his student, trusting his knowledge, etc. And of course, now, mashallah, us standing here among the living 15 years after his passing, and which he worked 33 years, and now we're 15 years post his passing. So we're talking now 48 years after he started. I mean, just think about that. I mean, that's a half a century of Imam Muhammad. Okay, so there were things that Imam Muhammad, he ways that he had to be with us, and therefore we had to be with him, because he knew the dangers. He knew what the threats were, the vulnerabilities. He knew our shortcomings, our weaknesses. He knew how we could be manipulated by people who didn't have our best interests in mind. And yes, you did have to trust him. You have to trust that. Uh, However, right, there's a value to being. You have to be conservative at a certain point. But see, just like with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I'm winding up talking longer than I intended right now. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he had a primary mission, and he was, it's like if you talk about first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, if you want to put it like that, right?
Yes.
So it's like, Farad and Elijah is the pregnancy, or rather inception, right? The inception. Then, Elijah Muhammad, in the absence of Farad Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam, that's the pregnancy, right? And then when Imam W. Muhammad comes on, that's the delivery, right? So it's like what was intended by that whole process was delivered in Imam W. Muhammad. Now he had to do what he had to do in order to move us to where And really, Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah, Allahu alam, whatever people may say, I'm speaking for myself personally, and I'm pretty sure I speak for the majority of those who really followed, gained, studied, learned from even Elijah Muhammad and Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah, that freedom, autonomy, independent thinking, but not stagnant independent thinking. Yes, he made you independent thinker, but don't turn around and only always think about what was said in the past. You have to be able to use that freedom of thought and go forward, follow the logic to its conclusion. So that means that there should be behaviors and thinking and ways of reasoning and inference making that should come from the process, you know. Okay, like you and your mother, right? Your mother, you know, she said you got the crown. She said she'd take the crown off to you for that cooking thing. That's a big thing, right? But I know y'all ain't shared no recipes. Y'all ain't shared no recipes like, okay, here, take this recipe that I wrote down for you. She ain't wrote down no recipe. You ain't wrote down no recipe. But you understand the paradigm of whatever it is that you're working with, the medium of the foods and seasoning and do-do-do-da. Okay, well, that's the same way with Imam W. Muhammad and those who are students of his. It's like, go cook, man. You know, cook, make the dish. You know? And so, and it's right at some point for some people. Oh man, I never heard Imam say that. I never heard Imam. Well, okay, what you didn't hear, what you're really talking about, you didn't hear the logic, the foundation, the reason, the predicate, the principles, the premises that he laid down for. If you walk on those stepping stones, it will lead you to the conclusion that it was fake. You look at the way stones are facing the stepping stone. You look at the way it's facing, and obviously that's where you're supposed to be going, right? How I'm going to look at the stepping stone, and then I walk everywhere where there ain't no stepping stone, right? So it's like once you walk on it, then it's, oh, this is where that leads to. You know, hey, Dorothy, follow the yellow brick road. You know what I'm saying? And I know that's got something else for you on the Dorothy piece. But we're going to get back to them ruby slippers next time, inshallah. I thank you. I thank everybody who's hung in there with us tonight. And alhamdulillah, we look forward to, you know, keeping it rocking, keep moving, keep them stepping stones moving, staying on the straight path, getting to the straight path, and sharing. So, last words from you, then I'm going to hit the switch. Party's over.
No, I mean, I said, I think I've said all I could say for it, you know, just
all right.
That's it. Yeah, I'm good. All
right. Well, then we're gonna call it a night then. All right, y'all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
That's it. I think we got it. Close out here.